it draws on age-old stories and stories that have been told for a really long time. But the way that I couched it is a relationship between a father and a son who have a somewhat tumultuous relationship. The father's dying, and the son feels like he never had a chance to get to know his dad because his dad was a teller of tales, exaggerator, fabricator, and never showed his son the essence of who he was. And the son's goal during the course of this book is to understand his dad. And interspersed within that narrative are some of the tales that the father is told throughout the son's life, which are fantastic and larger than life, and impossible. Meeting a giant, talking to animals, that sort of thing. So by the end of the book, a transformation happens in the relationship between the father and the son, in which the son learns to accept his father for who he is and to celebrate it, and not to try to change him to satisfy the son. So that's essentially what it is. And as I said earlier, the whole dynamic between fathers and sons, that's a hugely important relationship that, I mean, all males have, and women, of course, experience it in a similar way with their mothers. So it is something that was autobiographical in a general way, in as much as the relationship I had with my father was complicated and tumultuous. I mean, he wanted me to go into his business, for instance, and he was very hurt when I didn't want to. And didn't talk to me for a couple of years, actually. So, but that being said, when I was writing this book, he was alive. He wasn't dying at all. As far as I knew, he went, when I was almost finished with the novel, he went in to get a quadruple bypass and did die. So he never saw the book.
Did that affect the ending?
Um, I mean, that's a good question. I had an idea for what happens at the end, and I guess it would be a spoiler to say it for those who haven't read it. Um, but I think it affected the tenor of the ending, and actually, and this, I mean, it sounds self-aggrandizing, but um, writers use the experiences that they have to enjoy or endure for their work. And it definitely deepened what was written at the end. Allowed me to create the book that you've read is this relationship with my father and my interest in myth. I was always interested in myth, and especially Greek myth. So that was a passion of mine. And sort of like peanut butter and jelly, it came together and created this book. Really, I wrote it. I began writing it when my after my son was born, and he was an infant. Uh, I was taking care of him and could only write when he was asleep. So I would take him on a journey in the car. That's how I could put him to sleep. And then bring him back and very gently bring him into the office and set him down. And I could write for as long as he was sleeping. So some of the chapters you'll see in the book are a paragraph long, and some of them are 2 pages long and 3 pages. And those indicate how long his nap was, like rings in a tree. So I wrote them sporadically and jumping through time. And when I was writing them, I didn't have a sense of what I was writing. I was just writing these small folk tales, these myths, and using the time that was allotted to me because of I was raising an infant and writing folk tales, myths like this, it lends itself to brief chapters. And but as often happens in a with a writer and the books that they end up writing, it comes as a surprise that something turns into a book. And that's what happened with this. I saw I put a number of these tales together, and I saw that there was an arc to the life of the man, and then I made a graph of the moments in his life that were probably important or salient, and went back and consciously wrote those to fill in the rest of the book. Before the book was actually officially published, um, the movie rights were sold. And so I went into this public world with this, movie under my belt, and not an actual movie. Obviously, it took years for it to become one, and most books that are optioned do not become movies. It just doesn't happen. So it did get made, which was a miracle. Steven Spielberg was attached in the beginning, and then he dropped it, and then Tim Burton picked it up. He went to Alabama, which is where I'm from, made the movie there, and it came out in 2023. And that is when it became a bestseller. So it went, it was a very, very slow incline. And the movie just pushed it over the finish line. And I never, ever wanted to write a memoir. No compulsion to do that at all. Uh, as you were saying earlier, um, you would not want to write your memoir because you don't think that anything happened of any significance in your life, that your life is not interesting. And I've always felt that way about mine. And in fact, I still believe that this memoir, and it does qualify as a memoir, is really only partially about me. It's about my relationship again with a fantastic character, my brother-in-law. So in that sense, I was able to write this story with me in it as a character, but not necessarily the main character. My brother-in-law took his own life in 2001. My sister, his widow, died in 2011, and when she died, I found his journals uh, in the back of a closet, and I actually opened them up and started reading them eventually, and discovered that the man that he had presented himself to in the world was not wholly the person that resided within him. And that was a disparity that I found really interesting, in part because he was such a huge influence on me, and without whom I don't think that really I would have become a writer. Well, he was cool. I mean, in that way, that 1970s way, with the long blonde hair that covered half of his eyes, sunglasses, a motorcycle. Um, uh, he worked construction, so he was really, really, fit, and was fearless. Uh, he could do anything. He could build anything. He could fix anything. He's the guy who you would want on the little prop plane with you when it crashed in the Amazon. He's the guy that would get you out of there. He could fix the engine with a piece of pine straw and chewed gum. He knew stuff. I didn't know stuff. I never have known stuff. Again, moving back to Oh Great Rosenfeld, that's why I would be sacrificed at the very beginning. But he did. He's a very valuable person. Built the house that he lived in, and pretty incredible house uh, for my sister who had rheumatoid arthritis, serious rheumatoid arthritis, and he took care of her for 25 years. So he was a hero and a saint. And then when he took his own life, everything changed for me in my relationship with him and the idea of him. Really, really, it went from love to you know to real hatred of him and what he had done. Then, when I discovered his diaries, I learned of a different William, a different man than the one that I knew and the one that everybody knew. And it helped me understand him. It explained himself to me and eventually through the book to the world. And I was able to understand him and really return to this idea of the heroism that I saw in the beginning of our lives together. And even more so, this uh, his heroism grew for me because he was able to withstand for so many decades this suicidal ideation, which was really begging him to do himself in, trying to understand why people across the board make this decision. It's unique to everybody. Obviously, depression does play a role in it. Drugs can play a role in it. I mean, so many different things. Your success in life doesn't always have an impact on it because William was very successful. He published 10 books, sold 100,000 copies, and he was a cult figure in the adrenaline sports world. He was famous. So these things don't have a bearing really on the depth of somebody's angst and kind of universal depression. It's even deeper than the idea of depression that we carry with us. This, oh, I'm sad today. It's not that. It's not just that. It's a lot more than that. Uh, he felt unmoored in the world. He didn't have a place for himself. His childhood was really difficult, and every time he had an avenue to live and to live a life that was um, that he could create a successful and um, largely happy life. It was shut off to him. So this desire not to be a part of the world. And it wasn't, I mean, the only way for him to get out was to take his own life. But it wasn't that he wanted to take his own life. He just didn't want to be here. And so I do understand that people think of that as being cowardly, but we are we are being selfish, I think, making that judgment that we are judging this person um, who we don't really know who they are. We don't know what they're going through. And all we have is our own experience of depression to judge them by. And I get depressed. I don't, and I think about what it would be like not to feel that way. And the only way I feel like I can not feel that way is not to be here. But there's a difference, huge difference, obviously, in thinking about it and doing it. There's a part of the book where I talk about what the alternative to that for him would be. Uh, and would it have been better for him to live? And that's a tough question. Heard a lot from people who knew him and family members that still are alive, and from other people in the book who died, telling their story, and they've been really pleased and honored, tangentially by this book. I don't think that anybody who didn't like the book is going to contact me. So I don't know if that's a scientific thing, but I do feel like this is going to allow him to live in the public imagination for a lot longer than it would have otherwise